For most of human history, there was no such thing as a cat that loved you. There were just small, sharp-toothed predators living in the dark at the edge of the firelight watching. They didn't want your affection. They didn't want your lap. They wanted the mice. And somehow, across about 10,000 years, one of those wary little killers ended up asleep on your chest at 3 in the afternoon, purring, completely convinced it owns your apartment. Which raises a strange question. Dogs, we sort of understand, we bred them, shaped them, turned wolves into Labradors over thousands of generations of deliberate effort. But nobody set out to make the cat. Nobody was selectively breeding a better mouser in 8000 BC. So how did this animal, which still to this day, occasionally stares at you with the cold indifference of something that could absolutely survive without you, talk its way into roughly 600 million human homes? The answer is stranger than you'd think, because cats didn't get domesticated the way dogs did. Cats more or less pulled off the whole thing themselves. To understand how this happened, you have to imagine the world about 12,000 years ago, in a stretch of the Middle East we now call the Fertile Crescent. Something brand new had just appeared on Earth, the farm. For the first time, humans had stopped wandering and started staying put. They were planting wheat and barley, and this is the important part, they were storing it. Big clay-lined pits and granaries packed with grain, sitting in one place, season after season. Picture that for a second from the perspective of a small rodent. For a wild mouse, a human grain store is not a building. It is heaven. It is an infinite, weather-proof, predator-free buffet that never runs out. And so the mice came, in numbers no natural landscape had ever supported. The first farmers had accidentally built the largest concentration of rodents in the history of the planet. Now here's the important part. Where there is an enormous, dense, reliable population of mice, something else is going to show up. Something with whiskers and very good night vision. Enter Felis sylvestris libica, the African wildcat. A lean, sandy, unremarkable little predator that had been hunting rodents across that region for ages. And one day, somewhere on the edge of an early farming village, a few of these wildcats wandered in toward the granaries and discovered the same thing the mice had, free food forever. Except the cat's food was the mice themselves. This is the part that makes cat domestication so different from everything else. The cat was not captured, it was not bred, it was not tamed by a person at all. The cat simply identified an opportunity and moved in, and from the human side this was fantastic. These little predators were quietly slaughtering the rodents that were eating your winter food supply, and they asked for absolutely nothing in return. No leash, no training, no orders. You didn't even have to feed them. The arrangement was so good that the smart move for the humans was to just let it happen. This sounds like a tidy story, but scientists have actually traced it in the DNA. In a major 2017 study, a team led by geneticist Eva Maria Jagel sequenced DNA from hundreds of cat remains spanning roughly 9,000 years, from ancient Egyptian mummies to Viking-age ports. And what they found was that essentially every house cat alive today descends from that same African wildcat lineage, and that the cat spread across the ancient world riding alongside farming and later trade ships. The cats followed the grain followed the humans, and the further the humans went, the further the cats went too. But here's where it gets strange. When the scientists looked closely at the genetics, they found something almost no other domestic animal shows. The ancient cats and modern house cats are barely different. Genetically, your cat is almost identical to a wild African wildcat. We changed dogs enormously. We cranked them from wolves into Chihuahuas and Great Danes. We changed cows, pigs, chickens, all reshaped to suit us. But the cat, we barely touched it. The most obvious change scientists can point to over thousands of years is mostly coat patterns, the blotched tabby markings that pop up in the Middle Ages. That's it. That's the headline genetic event. Let that sink in. The animal sleeping on your couch is, biologically speaking, a wild predator that has agreed on a case-by-case basis to hang out near you. And this gets at the real heart of what domestication even means. With dogs, humans were in the driver's seat. We selected the friendly ones, the useful ones, the ones that did what we wanted. But cats domesticated themselves through a process scientists call self-domestication. The cats that thrived around villages weren't the best hunters or the strongest. They were the ones just slightly more tolerant of having humans nearby. A wildcat that bolted at the first sight of a person never got to enjoy the granary. A wildcat that could grit its teeth and tolerate a farmer walking past got to eat like a king. So generation after generation, the population around humans drifted very gently toward okay with people. Nobody decided this, there was no plan. There was just a slow, invisible filter. Tolerate humans, get the food, have more kittens. And over thousands of years, that filter produced an animal that can live in your home while keeping nearly all of its wild equipment fully intact. Which is why your cat behaves the way it does. Think about how extraordinary this actually is. Your dog looks at you like you're its whole world because we spent tens of thousands of years breeding it for exactly that. Your cat looks at you like an interesting and occasionally useful roommate because we never bred that out, or rather, we never bred anything in. When your cat ignores you for 9 straight hours and then demands food at maximum volume, that's not your cat being rude. That's a solitary desert predator running on software we never bothered to rewrite. The cat is doing exactly what its ancestors did. It just happens to be doing it on your bed. And yet, and this is the part that gets me, they did learn one new trick, and it might be the sneakiest move in the whole story. Wild cats, adult to adult, don't really meow at each other. The meow is mostly a kitten sound aimed at its mother. But somewhere along the way, house cats figured out that humans respond to it, so they kept meowing into adulthood, directed entirely at us. Some researchers have even found that cats can fold a faint, urgent, baby-like cry into their purr, a frequency that's weirdly hard for humans to ignore, because it sits right in the range of a human infant's cry. Your cat may have evolved a noise specifically engineered to push the "I must attend to this immediately" button in your brain. In other words, the cat didn't just tolerate us. At some point, it started managing us, quietly, with sound. We think we adopted them. From the cat's point of view, it found a warm building full of food and a staff that responds to vocal commands. So what does all of this mean the next time you look at the small animal in your house? It means you're not looking at a pet that humans designed. You're looking at the result of a deal, an unspoken 10,000-year-old handshake that started at the edge of a granary between a farmer who wanted fewer mice and a predator who wanted more. Neither side was trying to make a friend. Both of them just made the rational choice over and over for hundreds of generations. Until one day the predator was sleeping indoors and the farmer's distant descendant was buying it a tiny bed it would refuse to use. Inside every house cat is the shadow of an African wildcat, padding through the dark at the edge of the firelight, deciding on its own terms that we were worth keeping around. You never really tamed your cat. Your cat ran the numbers 12,000 years ago and decided you'd do. And now you know.